Welcome to Frost Sessions, the Frost School of Music's official podcast. On this week's episode, founder, president, and CEO of Jazz Aspen Snowmass, Jim Horowitz, interviews six-time Grammy-winning jazz bassist and Jazz Academy artistic director, Christian McBride. Today we talk about breaking the tortured artist stereotype, conducting business as a musician, and fixing the number one bad habit all young musicians make. Thank you for joining us today, and remember to stay tuned to Frost Sessions.
Groundhog Day over here, man. I don't know about you, just the surroundings and it's been as a musician and a timekeeper, which is what you are extraordinaire at the end of the day. Don't you find that in your entire life, the experience of time generally in the last year has gone through it is just an amazing, the stretching of it for me, stretching of it and the compression sometimes it's just off.
Well, I told someone like every day has felt like Wednesday since mid-March. Like I don't know what day of the week it is anymore.
That's it.
They all feel the same.
That's it. It's something else, but well, here we are. Okay. So I want to chat, man, because we have one of the things that has gone on, at least for me, during this time of COVID, of course, well, I won't say of course, I'll just say for me is a great deal of time at home and time to reflection on so many things. And one of them happens to be history and in my case, my life in the last 30 years, which is the length of time that Jazz Aspen has been alive. It started 30 years ago and we were supposed to celebrate our 30th year in 2020. So now we're going to try it again this year. But when I look back at history, and jazz is a beautiful music in that way, the fact of the matter is you are one of the artists, there's only a handful of people I could probably I can count on probably one hand that I have interacted with personally and professionally over almost that entire time. In your case, I think you were here first, I believe, in the mid-90s, around the time that Ray was here.
It was late 90s.
Late 90s was your first time? Okay, I knew it was somewhere between 96, 97, somewhere in there. Yeah, and so what was your first, so you tell me, because you maybe remember all the places, what were you doing that first time you came? Was it for the summer? Were you performing, or were you just here with the early Jazz Academy, which was the monk colony? Or is that what you came for first?
Well, when I came out for the first time, I got some great photos of this, but I first came out. What's beautiful is that you and we bonded rather quickly. I mean, we met when I came out there, and then like 6 or 8 months later, and you're in New York. You was like, "Hey, let's get together. I want to lay something on you." Right. And you offered me the artistic director position,
right?
And so that was in 1999 when I first came out.
That makes sense. And then it was starting the next year in 2000.
Right, that's right. And
that makes sense.
Mr. Nathan Davis was artistic director at that time, and I was only out there for a few days, like maybe 3 days. But Ray was there.
Mm-hmm.
Nicholas Payton was there. I guess that would have been Jeff Keezer.
Yes, Jeff was in Ray's band.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I remember meeting all of the gang. I remember Lisa Henry was one of the participants that year.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. I remember meeting Steve Mundinger. All the crew, man, Mark Breslin and, all of you guys just, I liked you a lot. And then, like I said, like 2000 came around and you came to New York and we had lunch and that's how it happened.
Yeah. Well, the Ray connection is important. And the Ray connection in my case goes back to Monty Alexander.
Sure.
Monty was really the guy that was who I met when I was pretty young. I mean, really young, a teenager, when he was had just landed almost literally from Kingston, Jamaica in Miami, where I grew up. And that was my first introduction to jazz, literally just as a kid, my family listening and really enjoying. And then it was years later that through Monty and just becoming a fan, I started to eventually, there was Monty and Ray playing together in some setting. And I think it was probably Triple Treat that they had going with Herb Ellis on the cover.
Yeah.
And it just somewhere in there, the light bulb kind of went off, and Ray, I learned from Monty that Ray was this just incredible fountain of a man who was an example, who carried so much music and so much joy, and he was a beacon and in so many ways, personally, professionally. And I saw that. I was lucky to get exposed to it early, and then when years later, I started to work with Monty professionally, and then one thing led to another in my own story. And eventually I did start Jazz Aspen, but it wasn't too long before the opportunity and the desire came up to do something intimate and ongoing. And that is how that program started, originally with the Thelonious Monk Institute.
Right.
And Nathan Davis was involved. And then after a few years, as we were just growing, we started to have our own direction and idea about what to do. And that's what happened. And Ray was a rock. And I remember seeing your connection with Ray and understanding instinctively and very quickly that you were really solidly in that, that Ray, you were tight. And there was a connection that you guys had on many, many levels. And I recognized it. And I recognized it was strong, and something about you. And you said it happened quickly, but that I'm definitely somebody in my life. I make decisions. Most of the people that I ended up getting involved with in a big way, whatever, personally or professionally, usually I had a very good feeling very quickly. And I trust that instinct. So you mentioned about them. Check out this picture that I found.
Oh, yeah.
There you are.
My favorite photos.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
And for our friends out there, this is in the basement of a hotel in Snowmass called the Silver Tree, where we started doing these amazing shows. And this was one of those first times, and Christian was there. I love Diane's face. Like, Herbie, what are you playing over there? And anyway, so many beautiful moments.
There's another version of that picture of me playing the piano.
Oh, yeah.
And Herbie looking at me going, like, Christian, what are you playing?
That's so.
I remember that was we were rehearsing for one of the galas, and E.J. Strickland, who was a student that year, played drums with us.
Mm-hmm.
And I've had nothing but some wonderful memories being involved with the family at Jazz Aspen. In fact, many of my band members have come through that program. That's, I always think of, I've always thought of Jazz Aspen as sort of like the AAA,
you're a baseball fan. I don't know baseball as well as you do, so tell me exactly what that means. Tell me exactly what that means.
That's like the last level before you go to the big leagues. So there's single A, there's double A, there's triple A, and then the pros. So I feel like most of the musicians that I've met there, many of them are at AAA status already. That's how I met Warren Wolf, the Strickland brothers. I remember when Gretchen Parlato was a student there.
So many.
So Christian Sands, I knew Christian already, but Ulysses Owens Jr., so many great musicians that have come through that program.
And by the way, you say that program, and some of the people who may be wherever they are, that program is the Jazz Academy, that's JAS for Jazz Aspen Snowmass, in association now with the Frost School of Music at the University of Miami, which is why we're here talking Frost Sessions. An interesting evolution of the collaboration that you're talking about, of keeping the tradition of this amazing music going. And you just dropped so many names there. not dropped, but mentioned people that are, and I can think of, there are so many. Sarah Gazarek is a singer that I remember who came here, and then the people that have taught. It's been quite a carousel. Well, tell me what you see. I wrote some things here to ask you about. So we first started, let's just say it's roughly 20 years, 99, 2000. So that's a nice piece. That's like a generation.
Right.
So what do you see from where you are and were in this beautiful picture, probably 20 years ago? And now, how would you say that the traditions of the passing down? Jazz has a very unique history in the music that we know, that's very particular, with its very strong history and different styles and its traditions. But tell me, from your vantage point, what's different from the process of how the older and younger musicians collaborate, work together, pass it down, and what's not different? And tell me, how does it look?
I think it's a really nice, it's a nice balance, because one thing that's obviously way different now is the technology. In 1999, there was no Spotify, there was no high speed Wi-Fi. You know what I mean? There were no iPhones. There was no instantaneous grasp of information. And so I think the tools that we had at that time, we did the very best with them that we could. And the musicians that came through the program, they had a wonderful time. Now you got this incredible technology where you can learn things at lightning speeds. The information that you can take in is incredible. I can't imagine what it would be like being 16 or 17 years old now and having never lived my life without an iPhone or without high speed internet. You know what I mean? So, to think of like, what do you mean? People are like, kids are like, what is this? A record? What's a record? You know what I mean? How do you make music from that? How do you listen to music from that? So, so technology is way different, and the way that we take in this information. But the one thing that has not changed, which I don't think will ever change, no matter how advanced the technology becomes, is this is an oral history, as you mentioned before. That really is sort of the core of jazz, or any sort of folk tradition. Me getting a chance to spend time with Ray Brown. I had a bunch of Ray Brown recordings, as you did. I saw Ray Brown on videos and listened to him as much as I could. But yeah, but then to spend time with him, you know what I mean? And there's been a lot of I think most older musicians, especially now, they can't wait for that moment. They want a young musician to come to them and ask them for some information. You know what I mean? Like, I think of those people like Ray and Roy Haynes, who's still with us, thank goodness. Chick Corea, Herbie Hancock, Diane Reeves, Jimmy Cobb, who just left us last year, Hank Jones. They couldn't wait for young musicians to come to them and say, how do I do this? Can you please tell me a story about something that happened to you on the road or things like that? So that part of the tradition will never change, because that's how you really get the information. I mean, like, yeah, you can listen to Spotify, you can watch YouTube, you can get all of that information, but to actually get it directly from the source, that will never change.
How about the audience? Now we have to stretch back. You got to stretch back to pre-COVID, because we haven't been doing live stuff. But you have plenty of record of performing in the last 20 years before this happened.
Yeah.
Anything you can say broadly about, again, what you've experienced? Anything about how audiences generally, and that could be America versus the world or urban versus anything about, well, I noticed that in broadly, this is what I've seen about how audiences are experiencing what I do or with my band and without some. I'd love to hear your comments.
I think if I like to think that I've taken a real deep dive and a deep comprehensive look into sort of the jazz audience over the last half century or more. I will say that jazz is it's a mature music. It's a mature music in a primarily adolescent culture. You know, America tends to be a more pop-oriented culture. You know, and so you have music that takes a little time to unfold. You don't make 2.5 minute singles.
Right.
You don't make, kind of like dance steps and videos and things like that. So it's a very mature person trying to exist at a at a 16-year-old birthday party.
Yeah.
So
challenging.
Yeah, and so I think it's been like that for quite some time, and I know that there's a narrative that in the jazz world that really hasn't changed, that we have to make the audience younger. We have to find new audiences, which is very true. I mean, look, I think being a festival artistic director now and knowing that sort of like the median age for many jazz festivals is like 60. That doesn't bode well for long-term life,
Classical music is certainly
big time. And so but that's interesting that you say that, because I feel that jazz it always kind of walks this tightrope between sort of like like the classical music world has created its own universe. So jazz is a little bit of that, but it also has a foot sort of like in contemporary mainstream culture. So there's always like this tug of war, like this is serious music. No, but it's still music for the people. Yeah, but it's serious music for the people. We need to, no, it's this. So there's always this tension going on. What's that?
Well, so it depends on which day and which artist.
Yeah, exactly.
And you talk about something that's, it's something that anybody who cares about the preservation and survival of jazz ought to, this has been, I think, is jazz dead? This has been fretted about by certain jazz people forever.
Forever, right.
But I think there's an interesting thing that we talk about when you're talking about placing jazz in the culture, which is that years and years ago, jazz did have a period of time when it was an American popular music form, because a lot of it did involve dancing.
Right.
It wasn't the only thing, but it definitely, I think helped push the music out into the general population and a kind of without even necessarily knowing, just the music got popular. I'll just say it became popular in a certain way. And then, of course, when it got more serious, at the end of the 50s, and then just jazz got into it's really, you must take us seriously. This actually is listening music.
Right.
And then, of course, we know here we are 50 years later.
And then at the same time that was happening, that first wave of rock and roll was getting popular. So it was just like,
yeah. Yes.
Yeah,
pretty well. Well, now, what do you think about, and I have my own opinions, but I'd like to hear yours. Okay, well, if jazz, and as we look at going forward, and you're talking about programming, which is something that I live a little bit with, and you look out and there's the audience, and you say everybody seems to be 60, they're having a nice time, but I can see what they like, and they're 60 to 80, and that's fine, but they are 60 to 80.
Right.
So how do you feel about music which is taking jazz and is kind of putting it into a context where it's blending with, whether it's funk or soul or any of the other forms of American music that are more rhythmically driven, perhaps, than melodically driven. But of course, when that happens, you may see, or I'll just say not you may, you will see some younger people. And is that a good thing? What they understand, what they're experiencing overall?
Yeah, I think it depends. Like you said, it depends on the artist, because artistically speaking, when these blends of these different styles and these different idioms kind of come together, from an artistic standpoint, I love seeing and hearing that happen. Right. I love when musicians experiment. We need to do that. That's what we do as artists. But if you do it because you're looking to sort of make the audience younger, I'm not really sure that's the way to do it, because I feel like, I don't care if you're 18 or 80, I really believe people know when you're faking it. It's like, oh, they're doing this because they're playing at us. This is not really who they are. I think people can sniff that out, so.
But if it's sincere, you're saying if the artist is coming from it, it's just like, hey, this is what I feel.
Because I remember when, we both remember this, but when I was in high school, that's when Wynton Marsalis really became a household name. And he was nothing like what we saw in popular culture. He was the antithesis of popular culture,
Which ways are you referring to?
Well, first of all, he wore a suit. We're talking.
You're saying, is that what you mean?
Yeah, we're talking 1983, 1984. Michael Jackson was our hero. Prince was our hero. Madonna was our hero. All these people who were like pop culture icons. And here's this studious young man in a suit and tie, playing a trumpet, playing jazz and playing classical music, European classical music, and using these, very intelligent, using these big words. You need to go find a dictionary. And he was like huge with people who didn't like jazz. So I think there was a sense of like, wow, this guy is doing something sincere. He's obviously good at it. We don't really know what it is, but he's obviously good at it, much in the same way as I don't think a lot of, I don't know if I can compare tennis to jazz, but I look at what the Williams sisters.
Two of my favorite things. Let's go. What?
There you go. So look at what the Williams sisters did for tennis. Got a whole generation of young kids who actually like tennis now. Tiger Woods did that for golf. So I think if your music sort of blends all these different things together from an organic artistic standpoint, that's amazing. But I don't think, if you do that with a sort of an intention on trying to capture the younger ears, I'm not sure that always works. Just be who you are and really embrace that. And it helps to have a good PR person too.
Okay, but so just give me an example of someone that's doing it sincerely. He goes, hey, now there's a cat who's putting jazz together with blank, and I love it. I love it. It's the right example, not the wrong example.
Well, I don't know if I can name names, but
all right, just all music. It's okay. Not against anybody. Just like
I can. Some of the examples that come to mind are here's what I'm judging this by. Like, for example, I remember seeing Kareem Riggins playing at the Detroit Jazz Festival one year, and he had a band with Robert Hurst playing bass. Was it Jerry Allen? No, Jerry Allen wasn't. Well, maybe she was playing. I think he had two keyboard players. But anyway, it was a really hardcore jazz group, right? And Common was a special guest.
Okay.
And I remember thinking, how is this going to work? Because they don't look like they're really set up to do a hip hop kind of thing.
Right.
And they didn't do a hip hop thing. Common was rapping over jazz grooves.
Wow.
And that blew my mind all the way open because I'd never seen anybody do that before.
Right.
They didn't switch it up to go into a hip hop thing when he came on. And what was great is that you had hardcore jazz fans who were there to hear, Kareem play with Jerry Allen and Robert Hurst. But then you had all of the hip hop people there to see Common.
Right.
And then once that band was over, they all stayed there to hear who the next band was.
Right.
And like, to me, that was like the greatest victory.
That was
yeah.
And that's the best thing, I think, when audiences mix and each come away with it with their mind having been up a little bit. That's from a programming standpoint. I think if you're at least from the standpoint of whatever the music is, if you're interested in watching it grow and stay relevant, and how do you do that?
Right.
When it's done, I'm with you, when it's done sincerely and well and right in the sense of with real intention and honesty and all that it can be great. My bet as a programmer or someone, that makes decisions about hiring artists in different settings, my best night is when someone says, I really didn't know much about this music and I knew nothing about this artist, and I don't really consider myself a jazz fan, but that was pretty freaking.
That was good. Yeah.
That was not good. That was great. And I've heard this a lot at our little series, Jazz Cafe. It's only 150 people. It's a club.
Yeah.
It moves around, but I've seen this a lot, and I've seen it a lot from young people because it just, since we started doing it in this particular town, Aspen, Colorado, there was no setting at all for anybody, young or old, really, to go out and check out the music. But it's a town that does love live music. So we've been able to get young people coming in, and a lot of the time they've been just like, God, I'd never heard anything like this. And, this is really, thank you. And so that's all positive. Well, all right, let's shift gears a little bit. What do you have to the extent that one can plan, but of course we're all challenged with a little bit of planning at the moment, but let's take COVID, let's put COVID to the side for a minute and talk about you and your music and what's ahead, and I'm talking not just next year, but what would you like to do broadly in 5-10 years? What would you like to take the longer view? Short, all of it. I'd love to hear what's on if you've thought about it. I bet you have.
That's a good question. I always try to be very careful about how I word this, because I would say particularly inside the last 5 years, probably the last 20, but certainly inside the last 5 years, I feel like I got quite road weary. Like, I was getting beat up, just being on the road all year long. And so in 2018 or 2017, I think it was, I made an attempt to take a sabbatical. I took like a 3-month or 4-month sabbatical where I didn't go on the road. And I almost depleted my entire bank account, but I would have to say that just from a rest standpoint, just to kind of get my brain restarted, my body restarted, it was amazing, absolutely amazing. And so when the lockdown happened, I feel bad saying this, but there was a big part of me that was like, yes.
I hear you.
I haven't seen an airport in 11 months and don't really care to see one right away.
Sure.
You know what I mean? So that's sort of short term. Like I've loved my time at home. This is the longest I've ever been in one place since my senior year in high school. Yeah. And I haven't really been doing a lot of gigs. I think I've done like maybe 5 gigs inside the last year, and they've all been like, fundraising events. a couple of online things, but generally I've been right here at home. Now, once this is over, in the short term, I'm looking forward to doing this reunion tour with Joshua Redmond, Brad Meldow, and Brian Blade. We were supposed to tour last year with the release of our last record, but
you're planning on doing that just when you can, or do you mean in 2021 or 22? You don't really know.
Well, we have all of the gigs that were canceled in 2020 have been moved to 2021, but at this point they're still kind of
you don't know.
They may or may not happen. I think most of them will happen. Not sure about the entire tour, but that will take up much of our June and July. And then as you well know, I'm juggling a lot of stuff with my own groups, my own projects. I have a commission. My first orchestral commission is happening this year.
Wow.
I got this.
What orchestra?
The New Jersey Symphony Orchestra.
Wow.
And so I've been asked to write a movement. This is weird. My first orchestral commission is for a French horn piece. I know virtually nothing.
To be performed with a full orchestra? Is that what you're saying? Not a jazz? No.
I mean, it'll be orchestra with a rhythm section.
Got it.
So it'll be jazz-ish, but I will have the entire orchestra there at my disposal. So I'm looking forward to that, and waiting to see what we're going to do with obviously all of the jazz festivals are kind of up in the air. Newport, we're trying to figure out what to do with that, and Montclair, we're trying to figure out what to do with that. NJPAC, everything has been pretty much virtual up until this point. So, but like you said, taking all that away, I don't really know what my mid or long term plan is. I look at people like Chick Corea, and because I've had the honor of working with him now for over 25 years, and I see how prolific he is. He's always writing new music. He's always got some cool project going on with some great musician somewhere. And I just admire his sheer output at this point in his life. It's just like, man, I want to do that,
Impressive.
Yeah. And, people like Ray Brown, Ron Carter, Ron Carter will be 84 this year.
Wow.
He looks like he's 50. And he sounds like he's 30. I don't know what he's taking, but I want some of that.
Where does he live, in California or East Coast?
Oh, Ron's in New York.
Okay.
Yep.
Nice. God bless him. That's good.
I know, man.
That's good. Well, let's talk a little bit about let's bring it back full circle to what we're doing together, which is the JAS Academy with Frost School of Music. And we've been at it for a couple of years now.
Yeah.
And, this year, well, let's just talk about the first part, which is something that I know is near and dear to your heart, and that is big band music. And Jazz Academy has focused its original session, which is the last week of July and the first week of August, and it will be again this year, with a big band that you do a lot of the arrangements for. And then we're adding another 2-week session prior to that, which is going to focus on small groups. And we're kind of looking for some of the finest emerging small groups that are out there, somewhere 3, 4, 5 musicians, different sounds. But again, just seeing what people are doing. This has been a great program for us to collaborate on. But I'd love to hear you talk a little bit about what you've seen just since we started with Frost. And you mentioned earlier, so I'm just going to throw this in, about the difference from 20 years ago with technology and how and the influence on life and music in general. And the Frost has a very, very strong part of their curriculum, which is about the business of music, and how one thing is, or as Ray used to say, romance without finance is a nuisance.
Come on, man, that's right.
we know that it's easy to love music. It's easy to love music, but to make a living and to make the work, that's work. It's a whole nother deal. And I hope, at least from my perspective, that this program Academy, with under your able direction as well as Frost, we're helping some musicians along. But tell me about what you see in the program and what we've got coming up.
Well, Jim, even before Frost came along, I think what you created there in Aspen has been rightfully celebrated. Now, the bigger the better. The more hands on deck, the better. So when the Frost School became involved, they have a legacy of their own. Their whole South Florida, University of Miami, Frost School, they have their own legacy that I'm not really sure people in the jazz community really know. My first boss in New York, Bobby Watson, went to University of Miami. Curtis Lundy, Pat Metheny, Bruce Hornsby, Carmen Lundy, all these people came out of there, and one of their more recent alumni, who I met here in Montclair, New Jersey, Emmett Cohen, has been carrying the torch for the Frost School for quite some time. And to me, Emmett is one of the classic examples of someone who has he's not just looking at the music. And I think that's a hard thing to teach younger musicians, because there's this sort of romantic, it's somehow cool to be the tortured artist. Everybody wants to be the tortured artist. You're not really, I think a lot of young musicians in their mind think, I don't have any gigs. That's cool. I don't have any money. That's cool. But that means my music is like full of soul. It's like, I live with 6 other people. Oh yeah, that's the way it's done. The struggle, like there's like this great, there's integrity in struggle. So you make yourself struggle so you can feel like you got this integrity or this deep power in your music. And I'm not sure that that's really smart, because like there are ways that you can have your musical integrity and not have to struggle. I mean, look, I think of Miles Davis. I mean, what musician had deeper soul or more impactful in the things that he created in this music? And he grew up the son of a school teacher and a dentist. He never had to struggle for any sort of money at any point in his life. I mean, until he wound up going through his personal problems. But he always Miles said he used to get offended when he would hear people say like, well, black people are better blues players because they don't have anything. They don't have as much as white people. And Miles Davis would say, excuse me, what was that? I never struggled in my life. I think I played blues better than most, and he was right. So I like the fact that with our collaboration with the Frost School, there is a focus on not just learning the history, not just learning the notes, not just learning the scales, the theories, but there's also a focus on technology, learning the business, having a career in this music. And as you well know, my man, Ray Brown, he was all about that business.
Yes.
He played bass better than anyone else, but he was all about that business.
No, he was.
Ron Carter the same way. Chick Corea. I see these guys on the tour bus. They making phone calls. They on their computers doing, and they're not punching notes into Sibelius. They're looking at spreadsheets. They're looking at bank accounts, and I'm like, go ahead. That's what I'm talking about.
Right. Well, something that I've noticed with young musicians over the years here at the Jazz Academy, and you never had to be taught this because you just did it naturally, but it's something. There's a couple of things just from my experience of just sitting in the audience, but organizing shows and then watching, that I've noticed, and it's something that I have frequently mentioned to young musicians over the years. Once in a while, someone who's here in the program would just say, hey, they'll probably call me Mr. Horowitz because they're mostly very polite. No one does that, but mostly that's what they will say.
Right.
And just, hey, I've, a question, and we'll get into a chat. And one thing that I've noticed a lot, that jazz musicians, and it can be all, not just young ones, but young ones have it too, is that I think can be a challenge. And I'm talking about in the live performance side of their life, is that there's a bad habit that I've seen a lot of young people have when they play music, is they look down. They look down. And what they're missing is the audience. And that sounds like a very silly, like, what do you mean? But sometimes and I remember, because, I was a piano player a long time ago. And if you look up, you might be amazed at what you'd see is actually going on there. For example, people that are engaged or are not, or how, or what is going on exactly. But thinking about, people like Ray and like you, there is that, and it's something that musicians have to remember, and they don't always, is that connection. It's the music. The music, it feels like when you're playing it, it's something it's yours, and you're creating, and you hope to create it with other musicians, which is a great joy. But the business of music has to do with connecting you with other people. And that part, you're great at it. And it's one of the reasons 25 years ago where I said, that's a guy that I would like to have around young people, because he just knows how to connect. And that's the kind of example that I think is so important for young musicians to understand. You are privileged to be making music, but you got to understand, if you want to just play for yourself, you can do that at home. But if you want to have a career out there, you're going to have to check out the people and figure out how to engage with them, because, well, it's just my opinion, I see people come in and engage, and then I see people come in and not engage.
Right.
Guess what? The ones that not engaged.
Well, I think also what happens is that a lot of younger musicians can get confused, because we've seen audiences reward bad behavior.
Fair enough.
And I think that I think as a younger musician, sometimes you're like, well, if they can get away with that, and at least I'm showing up. People pay. I know people have paid money to see. I hate to call names, but you go see somebody like Lauryn Hill. She may or may not show up. But people pay huge money to see if she's going to show up. That's weird to me.
I agree with that.
Keith Jarrett for many years, would sometimes berate his audiences.
I was in them.
People paid money to see that. It's like, oh, if Keith Jarrett screams at us, we got our money's worth. You know what I mean?
That's pretty sad, but you're right.
Miles Davis never uttered a word to the audience in his entire life. And like, people love to see that mysterious, like, what's he thinking? Oh my God, he probably hates all of us. Isn't that great?
Okay. But let me just say, you have selected a couple of examples of people of such towering talent. They could be that, but all of us are not. All musicians are not Keith Jarrett or Miles.
But my point was that when you're a younger musician and you see that, and you see that they are always the headliners.
Right.
There's a voice in your head that says, okay, I have the option not to be an audience person. Right. Mm-hmm. And I don't think you got to learn, and this is basic business. You got to know who you're playing for.
Right.
If you're playing a gig, I mean, even in New York, like, if I'm playing a gig at the Village Vanguard, that's not playing distance.
Carnegie Hall.
Yeah. Or exactly. Or like Merkin Hall or Town Hall, whatever it is. It's like, you got to know who's, the vibe of your audience. Playing in Hollywood is not the same as playing in Oakland.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Oakland is not the same as playing in, Houston, so to speak. So you got to know where you're playing and what is going to reach those particular people. Or the other reality is that if you're going to say, okay, well, look, I do what I do. Look, I'm not an audience person. I don't look at the audience. I would say that's fine, but you're going to get what you're going to get,
And then that's, yeah. And it's for some, it can work. And I'm not moralizing.
Right.
I'm just saying what I've observed. That's all. That's all.
I mean, and again, like you said, I think when you're young, you make a lot of mistakes. You're trying to figure it all out, and
sure.
Hey, I want to be hip. I want to be down. And that's why I've always felt like you need a lot of. It's weird now, man, because like I think of when I first moved to New York and I started playing with Bobby Watson and James Williams and Victor Lewis and Freddie Hubbard and Bobby Hutcherson and all these people, and meeting Ray Brown and Milt Jackson and Hank Jones, all those older cats, Betty Carter. We had really good examples of like, this is what you do, this is how you do it, and so it's like weird to know that like people like myself and Terrence Blanchard and Joshua Redmond, Chris Potter, Brad Meldow, Brian Blade, Greg Hutchinson, we're in those seats now, So it's like, wow. Like when I started playing with Bobby Watson, Bobby Watson was like 35 maybe, and I was 17, so I was like, man, Bobby's been around a long time. He's in his mid-30s. He played with Art Blakey in the 70s. Oh man, So I didn't think of 35 as old, but like kind of bordering old.
All relative.
And then like next year, man, you put it on your calendar. Next year, I got my big 5-0. Can you believe it?
It is? Whoa, that's big.
That's crazy.
Yeah, that's. What's the month?
May.
May, the lovely month of May.
Yep.
That's good. Well, I guess that's next year, 22.
Yes, 22. Yep.
That's better to have a party in 22 than May.
Right. That's right.
I think this May is still going to be a little,
a little iffy.
A little bit like this, but I'll tell you something that, and I've been hearing about this and talking about this with Frost and Shelley, but also some other people in the industry. And this has to do with this summer. And I'll just put this out, and I don't know how much you've heard about it, but I'll put it out there. That's something that we're really thinking could have quite an impact. And I will call it in the transition to a fully vaccinated population, which is going to take time. I mean, it's there are different people say, well, the population will be fully
be fully vaccinated.
By something such as that. But in the meantime, while we're getting there, there's something there's been a lot of progress made in, and you hear a lot less about it on the national news than vaccinations, which is accurate rapid tests. And what I've been talking to people about in the industry, and this will impact what we're doing, and what everyone is doing, is that there are, as we speak in January of 2021, there are countries and tests right now where you have a test that's very, very, very accurate, 98, 99%. And it's not expensive. It's only 10 or 15 bucks. That's relatively speaking, not overly expensive. And the results are back in 5 or 10 minutes. We think, and I've been talking to people that think, hey, this is January. And if they've made this much progress and along comes the summertime, and the answer is, hey, thank you, John Doe, for buying a ticket to the show.
Right.
Please note, when you arrive, you have two choices. You either have to show that you got your test within 48 or 72 hours and it was negative and you show it, and if you couldn't get it together to say, we're testing you here, but nobody's going in. And the reason for that is that the people who do go in can have confidence they're not going to get sick and die as a result, nor do they have to stay 8 feet away because everybody there is tested negative. Now, some people are going to say, well, it's not foolproof. Well, nothing is foolproof exactly in totally life. You could also, even if you were vaccinated, you could get killed by a drunk driver the next day, you know? So, but I don't know if you've heard about this, but I've heard about it. And I think that, like I say, for this summer, particularly when we're probably coming out of things and the level of vaccination is much higher and all of that, but that still this hunger to get back together will be, that's the push one way. And the other is, yes, but how is it safe yet? Or how safe? And our answer, well, in a manageable environment, we think it is safe enough. And I was talking to the doctor on the local county health board who said, we agree with that. And we will probably, by the time guidelines come along. So I don't know if you've heard about that. I think it's something that's hopeful for, and we did this with the Jazz Academy last summer. Granted, only 20 to 25 kids and 5 faculty, but we tested all the time, all the time.
I mean, absolutely. I mean, the protocols are going to be, as I mentioned before, we're trying to figure out what we're going to do with Newport this year, and as well as with Montclair. So we've heard the whole thing about the accurate rapid test. I did a thing just last week for the, we played a virtual concert for Boston Symphony Hall, like the BSO concert series, which is now virtual. So just to play the gig, the protocols were pretty, it was pretty deep. We had to, they sent you one of those at-home COVID kits.
Yes, to test yourself.
Yeah, and you had to send it in within a specific time period. Once you had to download an app. Once you got the results, you had to take the results and upload it to the BSO HR department. And then once you got to the venue to tape the concert, you had to sign another waiver and show like your test. I mean, it was very, very involved. But I guess whether you thought it was overkill or not, once you got inside, you knew everybody was cool.
Right.
And it's like, wow, we could play this concert and be like, how you doing? Yeah. You know what I mean? So I'm sure that going forward, certainly this year, there will be some very necessary protocols and precautions taken that will make everybody feel safe, and everybody will be cool.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I'm looking forward. I mean, I know who isn't? I guess there's some antisocial people that are happy that the whole world is all separate. Staying at home like they always. There's probably a lot of people out there like, hey, everyone is now you all know how I've been living for the last 20 years,
Have you seen Soul, the movie?
I heard about it, but I didn't see it yet.
I would suggest you see it ASAP. It's an absolutely beautiful movie. I'll give you just, I don't want to give it away, but I will say that the world is full of too many 22s. You will know what that means when you see the movie. Just remember the number 22.
Okay. All right. I know I've heard about it, and a few people said, yeah, you got to check that.
We have to help the 22s. I'm on earth to help 22s.
22s, okay. Not necessarily 22-year-olds, it's something else.
Well, it's
maybe.
Yeah, maybe.
We don't know. You don't have to check. We don't have to do. Yeah, I'll watch it though.
Yeah, you'll like it.
There's been plenty of good stuff. My word, you could this is about
Sylvie's Love is another good one you would enjoy. It's a movie about a jazz musician who it's a jazz romance. It's really great.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah.
Oh, it's been busy. Let me ask you something.
Yeah.
Because we're getting, I think they wanted us to I think this is supposed to be about an hour, and I think we're getting there. Any just anything that you feel that you just to share going forward, that why and how, if you think that COVID has just changed the just that things will never quite be the same around live music. I don't mean to be never, because never is an awfully long time, but the profound changes that you think this is going to wreak in a, if you had to say, well, I really think that such and such is inevitable as a result of this. So is there anything that
Yeah, well, I think one thing that has changed, well, one thing that's not going away, I have a feeling that the whole virtual option will stay.
Okay.
I think if venues kind of want to stay relevant or stay contemporary, they will keep some sort of a pay-per-view element, for lack of a better term. So pretty soon you'll be able to buy a ticket to watch a set at Ronnie Scott's in London. You'll be able to watch a concert at Tokyo Symphony Hall while it's happening. I mean, you'll have to wake up at 8 o'clock in the morning, but I think that element will stay around. That's something that COVID has brought.
I want to ask you something about that, because we've lived in, me from the standpoint of organizing it and you from the standpoint of being on the bandstand, of understanding that the live LIVE music experience is something that is very, very, very potent. It's very potent. It's very particular. And it's why a lot of music has survived, because it doesn't only exist when it's transmitted electronically or technologically or via some other thing. So and what you're saying is, well, the virtual element will be there.
Yeah.
You just try and here.
I think we'll be together again.
Okay. Yes. But do you think generations from now that over time people will just become less, it'll just become normal? Like, yeah, I might go, no, I think I'm just going to stay home. I got my surround sound and I'm just going to watch it. It's no, really, honey, who cares? Let's just fire up the Barbie and, we can watch Christian from home and I don't even have to get dressed.
Right. I think there'll still be enough diehards that will come out and hear the music.
I hope so.
Yeah, I like to think, my heart tells me that there's still some people that want to be there to experience that, because like you say, even watching it, on a live stream is not the same as being there.
The same. To me, it's just, it's so far. I talk to my dear wife, Nicole, who you know about this all the time. We've been lucky in that we've had this series. It's a little bit, it's not the Vanguard or nothing like that, but we've had a series here that's been going on for 10 years now.
Right.
Winter, summer, and we're so used to just, well, it's a show, we're just going. And it's such a personal and particular thing live. And we meet in the worst way. Just some nights, oh God, I can't believe we do not have the option of going over. We'll put on some music. Okay, it's great to listen to music at home, but it is not the same.
Right. It's not the same thing.
So I'm going to be one of those people. I'm all in favor of recorded and streaming and a distribution and all of it, because anything that pushes the music out and engages an audience on the whole is a good thing. But I just think that in the corner of the music that we're in and that you're in, we have a responsibility to just be preachers for live and keep pushing and not just say, yeah, it's okay. I mean, it is okay, but I don't want us to become complacent and feel that, it's just fine. Just like, for example, people are thinking, hey, this is great. Because of COVID, I no longer now, there isn't going to be an office. I'm not going to have to commute. This is great. Well, that part of it is great, but part of being isolated from human beings is not great. And you don't collaborate the same way, and you don't have friction. And there's all kinds of stuff that doesn't happen when you are physically isolated. And so my parting shot is, we need people like you who have that gift to keep pushing the audience and the other musicians to the value and how important it is, and how COVID has reminded us what we have lost in that live connection. And it's very precious. And I just think that, we need to pay attention. That's my opinion.
Yeah, I'm with you all the way, man. Like I said, I really believe that since this has done such a doozy on us, and we really miss each other as human beings, to be able to be together. We'll be back. I feel that the bodies will be back in the seats.
They will,
and they'll always be there, even once, if the whole pay-per-view thing stays happening, there will still be people in the seats.
Well, the Roaring 20s followed the Spanish flu, and the Roaring 20s were, I believe, kind of a time, it was kind of what they called the jazz age, when it was really. So I would say that we do, pop music is whatever it is, but
and the disco era followed Vietnam.
Yes. So there's the pent up hunger is there.
Right.
But
right.
There's joy. There's joy to be shared. We'll be part of it for sure.
So in other words, be prepared. The rest of the decade is going to be one wild party.
I can't wait. We can't wait. And I hope we got your disinfected room and good screens and
right on, baby.
Yes, we got all kinds of things. We need you here this summer, man.
I'll be there.
I know you're zooming. We'll get you here one way or the other. Don't worry. All right.
I'll be there in body.
Yeah, that's what we love to hear, man. Good. Well, I think as they say, music, that's a wrap. I'm good. Anything else you want to add to the great podcast audience out there who might have?
And it's just it's wonderful to see you again, and it's been a thrill to be part of the family, the Aspen family, for all these years. Can't believe it's been 22 years since
20 plus years.
That's crazy.
At the same time, I just see her walking by. My colleague, I call her my wife, but we're colleagues now.
Is that Andrea?
No, that's not mine. That's Andrea's my actual work on. Nicole.
Oh, your actual wife.
My
okay.
Actual true wife, yeah. She just was walking by with a big smile because she could hear your voice.
Oh, well, tell her I said what's happening.
Hear your smile, and she's just walking over there. But 1999, 2000, that's when I met you and her, like within months of each other. So
that's wild, man.
Two people who smile a lot. All right. Yeah, man.
There you go.
All right, Christian, we'll be in touch, man. Love you. Keep it up.
Love you back.
Keep doing it all, and we'll see you this summer, but we'll be in touch well before.
You got it. Sounds good, brother.
Later. Take care, man.
You got it.